Can a mission statement help you better manage your finances? How can the Purge, Merge, and Upgrade strategy simplify your finances and save you money? And how can you easily determine the total cost of owning a car? We'll answer these questions and more on this, the 64th episode of the DoughRoller podcast.
Welcome to the DoughRoller podcast, where the best thing money can buy is financial freedom. We help you make more, spend less, and invest the rest. And now your host, Rob Berger.
Whether you're just starting out, buried under a mountain of debt, or well on your way to financial freedom, this is the podcast to help you take your finances to the next level. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the 64th episode of the DoughRoller podcast. I'm your host, Rob Berger. And on the show today, we've got a guest, JD Roth. JD is the founder of the personal finance blog, Get Rich Slowly. And he'll be on the show in a little bit to talk to us about a year-long course that he has developed to help you improve your finances. I think you're going to find it to be a very fun and helpful interview, and I think you'll like what JD has to say. And his year-long course, I think, is a very creative way to help people who are struggling with their finances. It goes far beyond what you traditionally think of as a personal finance book. So I was grateful that JD would come on to the show, and I think you'll find that interview to be a lot of fun. A couple of things, though, before we get to the interview. First, this podcast is sponsored by Betterment, the most preferred automated investing service. Betterment uses cutting-edge technology to optimize returns, minimize taxes, and save you time and money. Join over 34,000 customers who have already streamlined their portfolio management at betterment.com/roller. Now, two things before we get to the interview with JD. The first is a news item. I read an interesting article here. It's early May. It was in the Wall Street Journal, and it's entitled "Retirement Investors Flock Back to Stocks." And here's the deal. Apparently, stocks accounted for 67% of employee contributions to retirement accounts in March of 2014. All right, fine. What's the big deal? Here's the big deal. That is the highest percentage of contributions to stocks, as opposed to, say, bonds, since March of 2008. I have to tell you, that really scares me. Here's why. In March of 2008, if you recall, 08 and 09 were tough years in the stock market. I personally know a lot of people who, out of fear, pulled every last nickel out of the stock market. And I have vivid memories of talking to folks, including a good friend of mine named Jeff, took everything he had out of the stock market. And I said, Jeff, when are you going to get back in? When is it going to feel safe? And he didn't really have an answer to that. And my concern is that folks, when the market was low, they were scared. They pulled their money out. Now the market, we had a big year last year. The market is doing fairly well this year. And folks now feel comfortable. It feels safe. And they almost feel like they've been left behind. And so they rush to invest in stocks at a time when the market could correct itself. I don't know that that's going to happen tomorrow or even this year. It will correct itself. It always does. It always reverts to the mean, right? And so folks get into this vicious cycle. When the stock goes down like it did in 08, they get nervous, they sell. Then when stocks seem to be on a tear, they're on a high like now, they feel safe and they rush back in only to see the stock market eventually correct itself, and they repeat the cycle over and over and over again. I hope that's not you. If you've listened to these podcasts, you know my view on this. I have an asset allocation plan and I stick to it all the time. I hope you do too. Hey, the money tool of the day. So this comes from Edmunds.com, the car website, and it's their true cost to own a car. You'll find this tool, it's free, at Edmunds.com/tco.html. Edmunds.com/tco.html. And it's a great tool. It'll take you just a couple of minutes to use. And what you can do is you can search for any car. I put my own car in there, which is a 2011 Toyota Camry hybrid. So you can select the make of the car, the model, of course, the year, and then engine size. And when you do that, what this tool will provide for you is an estimate of the true cost to own the car over a 5-year period. So it includes, of course, the cost of the car, but depreciation, taxes and fees, financing. They assume you finance it. I didn't finance our car, but they have financing costs assumed in this tool. Cost of fuel, insurance, maintenance, repairs. It's a great tool, particularly if you are in the market to buy a car and you're wanting to compare not just the price of the car. Of course, you compare that as you're thinking about different models and makes and models that you might buy, but all of the other costs that go into a car. And I think it's a great tool to use. Again, it's an estimate. There's going to be a variance, of course, but I think it may be a good starting point for you if you are in the market for a car. So check that out. It's called the True Cost to Own tool, and it's on edmunds.com/tco.html. Okay. With that, I want to get to the interview with JD. I think, as I said, I think you'll find this interview to be a lot of fun, and I think you'll find the guide and the year-long course that he's created to be quite helpful. JD, welcome to the show.
Hey, Rob. Thanks for having me.
Hey, before we hit the record button, we were actually talking about a pretty interesting topic that I kind of want to maybe start with, but before we get to that, some folks may not know who JD Roth is.
Sure.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do?
My name is JD Roth, and I call myself an accidental personal finance expert because I don't have any qualifications to be writing or giving money financial advice. I don't have I'm not a certified financial planner. I don't have any kind of formal education in finance. However, I'm kind of a self-taught guru. I don't like calling myself a guru. I have self-taught knowledge. Let's put it that way.
Fair enough.
And basically, I struggled with debt for a long time, began to read about how to get out of debt, apply things to real life, experiment with what worked and what did not as far as getting out of debt and building wealth, and started a blog called GetRichSlowly.org, where I shared my experiences. And that blog, for whatever reason, became very popular and successful, and it was able to allow me to quit my day job and write about money full time. And in fact, I eventually sold the blog and was able to set aside a nice nest egg because of that. And since then, I've gone on to I write the Your Money column for Entrepreneur Magazine. I wrote a book called Your Money: The Missing Manual. And just recently, I released a year-long course called Get Rich Slowly. That's based on the premise that if you manage your personal finances the way a business manages its money, you'll have a lot more success.
Yeah, and I'm getting a little bit of feedback. Can you hear that on your end?
No, I can't hear it.
That's actually quite bad.
I'll turn down my speaker to see if it helps.
Let me try it again. Oh, that's much better. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I'll edit that out, by the way. Sometimes I actually don't, maybe I won't edit it out, because sometimes I think when things go wrong, it shows people that we're just real human beings trying to make the most of this technology, and things don't always go according to plan.
Well, right. And I just mentioned my course. I recorded 18 audio interviews for that course, and I was faced with a dilemma. Do I edit these, or do I just put them out there raw like they are? And for a variety of reasons, time being one of them, I chose to put out the interviews raw. But also, I think showing the actual flubs and whatever, I think it makes them more accessible. It shows that we are real people.
Yeah, and in fact, as I sit here and think about it, I'm not going to edit that out, JD. We'll leave it in there. I think people listening to this, they like to know who JD is, and they like to know who Rob is, and we're real people trying to deal with the same financial issues everyone else is trying to deal with, and we make mistakes just like everyone else. Yeah. And I talk about them. So I do want to talk about your new, I guess, book. I'm not sure if that's the right way to describe it, because it's really more than that.
Yeah, we're calling it a course, and the book component, we're calling it a guide because it's an online book. That's like the cornerstone of it. So.
Right. Well, before we get to that, though, before I'd hit record, we were talking about Farnoosh's new book.
Yes.
So, and some controversy maybe that you...
Yeah, so
tell me about that.
Farnoosh Torabi has a new book out called When She Makes More. And it's specifically about the situation that occurs in about a quarter of U.S. households where the woman earns more than the man and is therefore the primary breadwinner. And this is up from about 6% in the 1960s. And her premise is obviously, this should not be an issue. We should be okay with that. Why does it matter that a woman makes more than a man? But even people who are very open-minded and very liberal find that when the situation occurs, it can be, if you're a man, it could be emasculating. If you're a woman, you can feel resentful that the man isn't making more. Both genders can find it troubling. Not that they do, but they can find it troubling. And so her book is about providing a set of real-world tactics, I guess 10 rules she calls them, for people in this situation to cope with the issue if it does become an issue in the relationship.
Yeah. And the book was just released, yes?
Yeah, I think today, which is May 1st, is the publication date.
Yeah. So I haven't read it yet. I do want to read it. My wife and I discussed this, and I think we both come from, I guess, traditional backgrounds, if you will. I don't know if that's even the right way to describe it. But one of the sort of related topics we talk about is situations where there's a stay-at-home dad. And so obviously the wife is making more, but it's not just making more. The dad's not generating income.
Right.
And what kind of issues that creates. And I think it's probably similar to what she addresses in her book. So I'll be interested to read that. I take it you've – go ahead.
I was going to say the stay-at-home dad thing. Actually, in my review of the book, I called my friend who is a stay-at-home dad because his wife is a pathologist. He used to be a school teacher, and she was earning, I don't know, something like 5 to 10 times as much as he would make. So the choice was obvious. He was going to be the stay-at-home dad. And he's fine with it. She's fine with it. It works for them. But in some cases, people have issues.
Do they have any struggles with it at all, or is it just 100% fine?
No, they are on the same team. This is what it amounts to. They are on the same team, and he's happy. They approach it from a logical perspective, and he doesn't have any issues at all. But on the other hand, there are people who end up in that situation who are not okay with it. And I think Torabi addresses some of those issues in her book.
Okay. Good. Well, I'll definitely read that. I'm sure it'll be topics for future podcasts as well.
Yes.
So let's talk about your new course, we'll call it. I read through the I bought the course.
Oh, thank you.
And I read through what really is a very comprehensive, I guess it's a PDF. I'll call it the book portion of it, if you will. I don't know. I keep going back to book.
I'll call it the book portion. I'm supposed to call it a guide.
Guide. I like that. Guide.
It's called Be Your Own CFO.
Okay. Now, as you mentioned, you'd already written a book.
Yes.
Money the Missing Manual, right?
Yeah.
If I've got it right. So why did you write this guide?
Well, for one thing, when I wrote Your Money the Missing Manual, that was about, almost 5 years ago. And that did a good job of capturing what I knew about personal finance at the time. But my thinking has evolved, and I've learned more. And I've also that first book was meant to be comprehensive and not very. I didn't tell people what to do. I just basically said, okay, here are things out there available to you. And while I'm proud of that book, it's very much meant for beginners, and it's kind of like a dictionary or a reference, I guess. Whereas the Be Your Own CFO guide, that's part of the Get Rich Slowly course, it's much more directed at people who want to master their money, who say, okay, I'm willing to accept responsibility for my financial situation, and whether it's getting out of debt or saving for retirement or whatever their goals are, they want some actual direction in achieving their financial aims. And so I incorporate a lot of my latest thinking on personal finance in there. And I also use this metaphor that I came up with about managing your personal finances as if you were managing a business. Because I think, to be honest, Rob, I think a lot of people, almost everyone understands that a business needs to make money in order to survive. That making money may not be the purpose of a business. For example, Apple Computer often talks about how our purpose isn't to make money, it's to provide products that people want, and when we do that, then we make money. Steve Jobs was very vocal about this. But a business can't survive without money. And I want people to understand that the same principle applies to their personal lives, that if you start thinking about your personal finances as if you needed to make a profit, I think it can become easier to manage your money in a way that's productive.
Yeah, and I really liked the idea. You talk about saving money. How much of your income can you save? 5%, 10%, whatever. In your book, you referred to it at times as profit.
Yes.
And I really like that idea because it really does kind of almost give a different angle on what is otherwise a familiar concept. It really is profit.
Yes.
I think it's a great way to look at it, borrowing it from the business world.
And I think I think sometimes people who are just existing day to day, they think of saving and they think, why the heck would I want to save? I want to spend this money now. But if you look at it as profit, you can make yourself understand that, oh yeah, business needs a profit in order to do the things it wants to do to grow, and so on. And I can see why I would want a profit too.
Now, I want to dive into the book. I'm sorry, the guide. I'm going to have to keep correcting myself.
Let's call it a book. Don't tell Chris Gillebo.
Well, that's actually my question. As you were thinking about this project, how did it come to be that it was part of the unconventional guides, as opposed to just a traditional book like your first one, or maybe an Amazon book? Why did you go the guide method or the guide way?
Well, last spring, I began to think about writing a second book, and I actually I talked to a couple of agents, but neither of them were enthused about what I wanted to do with a book. And I hadn't seized on this idea of managing your money like you're managing a business yet. But I wanted to write something that was very psychological and about the mental aspect of managing your money, because I think that's the most important thing. And publishers just aren't interested in that. And I know that from talking to publishers, that they just don't seem to be interested. And so I was just kind of sitting on the idea. And last May or June, Chris Gillebo, who's a friend of mine, approached me and said, hey, I have this series of unconventional guides, and in 2014, I want to do more of them. I would love it if you did an unconventional guide about money. And so I had a few months to cogitate on that. Before I began writing it in the fall. And so I kicked around a lot of different ideas. And I knew going into it that I wanted to write about achieving financial independence, about taking control of your personal finances and being proactive, I guess. Because I feel very strongly that the mistake that a lot of people make is they're not proactive. They're very reactive. They respond to things that happen to them rather than preparing in advance and taking charge of their lives. So I had 3 false starts on this project before I finally hit on the idea. We kept coming back to it. I mentioned the fact that you should manage your money like a business over and over again on my 3 false starts. And finally we said, oh, this is the core idea. Let's go with this. And once I fixed on that, it became clear.
Yeah. Well, the one thing that the way you've published this as a guide that it allows, and you've alluded to this, is, for example, there are audio interviews that are available that wouldn't be available in a traditional book platform. And those that buy the guide, and you have different options, but they get access to other resources that are available to them. Then I've only just begun to go through all of those. Mm-hmm. And I think in that sense, what you've created is significantly different. I mean, we, particularly as bloggers, we've read a ton of personal finance books. I know you've read countless, right. I'm looking
my shelf over here.
Yeah. Right. We're video Skyping. I know the folks listening to the podcast obviously can't see it, but behind JD are just a mountain of books. Now he's holding them up.
I've got them sitting all over my office.
Think and Grow Rich. Right. And in fact, I'll be honest with you, when I opened up the PDF and started reading, I thought, is this going to be just another personal finance book that I've read 1,000 times before? And I was pleasantly surprised I'll be honest with you, how much I enjoyed reading it.
Thank you.
Which may sound goofy. It's like, but I think when you've read so many, and I'll start at the beginning. I mean, well, first of all, you have, I noted a handful of quotes that are just gems in the book. One of them that I love is this: your circumstances may not be your fault, but they're your responsibility.
Right.
And I think that is a fabulous way to think about it, because a lot of times circumstances happen in our lives that are just beyond our control.
Right.
We have health issues that drive us into debt, or someone cheats us, or, these things, and they're not your fault, but you can't stop there because you got to take responsibility.
Exactly.
And so that kind of gets me, I guess, to the first part of your book. When you talk about, it's not just good enough to know what you should do or how you should do it. You should also know the why.
Mm-hmm.
And you talk about a mission statement. Why is the mission statement and understanding the why important to you?
Okay, remember this question because I think I'm about ready to go on a tangent.
Okay.
I want to say that when I write about personal finance, I'm almost never writing about money. And I don't think anybody really is. We're writing about deeper things. Money is just a tool to get to achieve the things that we really want in life. And so I have a psychology background. I have a psychology degree. I read self-help books all the time. I have one shelf of personal finance books here, but I have two shelves over there of self-help books. And so you just brought up the it may not be your fault, but it's your responsibility. That idea comes from reading books like The Road Less Traveled by M. Scott Peck and The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey. These books, they talk about getting to the heart of what motivates us personally. And so one of the classics in discovering what your meaning and purpose is in life is a book called Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl. Frankl was a psychologist who was imprisoned in Nazi concentration camps during World War II. And he survived, largely due to chance, obviously, because that's how it worked, but also because he kept a positive attitude. And even in the bleakest of possible conditions, he was able to find meaning in day-to-day existence. And so thinking about that and reading a lot of other stuff recently after my divorce, it made me realize that having a purpose and having direction allows us to channel our efforts in a way that's productive and helps us achieve our goals, I guess. The way I think of it is, if you don't have a direction, then you kind of wander aimlessly. You don't have an end in mind. And this is true with your money. If you don't have a goal in life, you just kind of spend aimlessly. But as soon as you achieve some sort of purpose, some sort of direction, then you know when you spend in a way that doesn't support this direction, I guess. Like if my purpose is to travel and I'm spending $120 a month on a digital HD TV cable package, that doesn't support my goal to travel. I don't give a rat's ass about TV. So for me personally, that's not a good expenditure. So getting clear on what your purpose and goals are, I think can really help people direct their spending.
Yeah, and one of the things you do is convey that in your guide. I got it right this time. Through telling stories.
Right.
I mean, you have one that comes to mind, and you mentioned travel. I think this was her story. I may have them confused, but Paula Pant's story was...
Yes, correct.
She wants to travel. Mm-hmm. And that really shaped how she handled her money.
Yes.
And I think that's it's a powerful way to communicate, a very profound idea. Mm-hmm. And I guess that comes back to, in your book, you recommend that everyone prepare a mission statement. Mm-hmm. And so what should, folks that buy the guide can obviously read through it and you give a lot of detail, but at a high level, what should a mission statement look like and how can it help folks?
Well, a mission statement is going to be different for each person. What I recommend is taking some time, setting aside some time where you can actually think about what your values and priorities are and what it is that you really want to accomplish in life 3 years down the road or 30 years. And so a mission statement, boy, to be honest, Rob, I can't give you just off the top of my head how a person should craft it because I think it's a very personal thing. So in my case, when I was writing the guide, I realized, I don't have a written mission statement. I know what I want to do in my head, but I don't have a written one. So I spent an entire afternoon, about 2 or 3 hours, sitting down and crafting my mission statement, which, let's see if I have it handy. It's handy-ish. I say my purpose is to live the best life I can while helping others do the same, plus I want to explore the world. That's like a brief summary of it. And I realized as I was thinking that I really enjoy talking with people about money and about self-development and talking with them about ways they can live better lives and about how I can live a better life. And so that's my purpose. And in the guide, I talk about figuring out what your overall things that you want to accomplish are, and then setting up some sub goals that will help you pursue that purpose.
Yeah, and again, folks that get the guide will see this, but you walk them through how to craft a mission statement. You give them examples.
Yes.
You give them how to set goals, short, intermediate, and long term.
Yes.
And you even talk about something that I think is so critical: are habits.
Yes, absolutely. I think those are missed a lot of times when people set goals. To me, those are ongoing goals. So, those are the kind of habits that we develop, or that's what habits are. And it's not necessarily my goal to. How do I say this? My goal isn't to learn to play the guitar. My goal is to practice the guitar every day so that I can become better at it. I want that to be a habit.
Right.
And so, I just think it's important that we build good habits and to encourage the behavior we want, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, to me, habits are goals we don't think about.
I like that.
Yeah, and they can be good goals or they can be bad goals. But the thing about a mission statement, then we'll move on. But to me, as I thought about, I don't have a written mission statement, and after reading your guide, I'm going to prepare one. And to me, you think about money. We spend money, of course, it's a daily thing. And sometimes we think, oh, well, should I go out to eat or not? Should I, as you said, spend $120 on a cable package or not? And it almost seems painful to deny ourselves some of those things.
Right.
And we ask, well, what good's it going to do? If I save $50 here, it's not going to make a difference. Except that repeated over and over again, it does. And I think if you have a mission statement, in your case, maybe travel, for example, you can see the immediate benefit. If I make these quote unquote sacrifices, it'll allow me to fulfill what are truly more important things to me.
Exactly. And I think you're hitting on a number of points here. And let's see whether I can nail them all. One thing is, when you choose to save instead of spending today, that saving is not a sacrifice. You're not giving things up. What you're doing instead, well, actually you are, but we'll get to that in a minute. It's not a sacrifice in that you're depriving yourself. What you're doing is you're choosing to spend on the future instead of spend on today. Money saved is still money that's going to be spent. It's just money that's going to be spent in the future on things that are more important to you than some of the lesser things today. And this gets to the notion of what I call conscious spending or mindful spending. It's something that I learned about from Ramit Sethi at I Will Teach You to Be Rich. Paula Pant writes about it at Afford Anything. But it's basically this idea that you need to be very deliberate with the spending that you do. Rather than spending to try to keep up with people or because everyone else is doing it or because you think it's expected of you, you should spend based on what your values are. Make a conscious choice instead of spending out of habit. And doing this will allow you to pursue your goals more effectively. And I have a short chapter in the guide about opportunity costs and conscious spending that is actually, it's my favorite part of the guide, to be honest.
So how do you spend consciously? I mean, how does that work in practice day to day?
Well, I think each person has to develop habits that allow them to be more deliberate with their spending. When I was first struggling to get out of debt, one of the things I did, for example, is I had what I called a 30-day list. If I were at the store and I saw something I wanted, instead of just purchasing it because I wanted it right then, what I would do is I would write it down on a piece of paper, go home, put the item on a list on the refrigerator, and eventually this moved to a text file. And I put the item on the list. I wrote down where I saw it, how much it cost, and what the date was. And if a month later I still really, really, really wanted it, then I would consider purchasing it. And I didn't always purchase it, but sometimes I did. And this forced me to be much more mindful about the choices I was making with my money. Because before, I would just go buy whatever the hell I wanted. So this is an example of a way to become a little bit more deliberate.
Did you find in doing that there was a lot of things on the list that you ended up not buying?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I still do this to this day. This is kind of a dangerous thing to do, but that's what I use my Amazon wish list for. It used to be I would just buy whatever I wanted on Amazon when I saw it. Now, if I see something on Amazon I want, it goes on the wish list. And about, 3 or 4 times a year, I go through the wish list and I remove all the things I no longer want. Now, the problem is, of course, I'll see some things and go, oh, yeah, I do want that. But maybe it's not a problem because if I still want it 3 or 4 months later, and it's something that matches my values, then I don't have a problem buying it. I took them out of the room. I was going to show you a couple of books that I just ordered from Amazon, but they're books about money. They match what I'm writing about, and they're going to help me. So I don't have a problem that I spent money on that.
Right. Good. In the guide, there's a lot of first of all, you reference a lot of online tools that folks can use, and a lot of sort of rules of thumb. One actually, I just referenced myself in a podcast a couple of podcasts ago. The price to rent ratio, and deciding whether you should rent or buy. So folks listening should be familiar with that. I liked the way you talked about how much if I spend $1 now, what am I giving up in retirement? And you just said, let's simplify it, and you do what you call the 10x. I call it the 10x rule, right? Where you're basically saying, if I spend $1 now, I'm losing $10 in retirement,
right? Which
is sort of a good way to kind of internalize the actual cost of something to your, I guess, your future self,
right? Well, and I like the notion of a future self. I've written about present you and future you before.
So tell us about that.
The present you and future you.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, this comes from, I think it was a talk by Daniel Gilbert, who is a psychologist on the East Coast who teaches about happiness and how we derive happiness. And his point, I think this is a TED Talk actually, his point is that the present you thinks it knows what the future you will want, but in reality, we're piss poor at actually knowing what the future you is going to, you're piss poor at knowing what the future you is going to want. And so we make these decisions based on what we think we'll want in the future, and we're very often wrong. And I can't remember what his moral is from that, but my moral is that there are a couple of things. First of all, we may be bad about predicting what we'll want in the future, but we don't have anything better to go on. So we need to move in a direction. For example, when we were talking about a mission statement and setting goals, you need to move in that direction, even though you have to be aware that your mission statement and goals may change as you go along. But at the same time, when possible, you shouldn't commit yourself to big expenses or big life circumstances, especially when you suspect there's a chance that things might change. An example is, I really thought for a long time that I wanted a big old farmhouse on a lot of land. And so about a decade ago, my ex-wife and I bought a big old farmhouse on a lot of land. And it seemed great for a while, but then the reality of funding this farmhouse came into being, and then so especially did the work on 2/3 of an acre. This isn't going to sound like a lot of land, but close into Portland, 2/3 of an acre is quite a bit. Having 2/3 of an acre to maintain, it was a pain in the ass. I hated going out and trimming the shrubs and mowing the lawn. And the reality was the younger JD had no idea what the older JD was going to like and want in value.
Yep. I'm right there with you. We have it's not a farmhouse, but we deal with a half an acre. And I was just before our interview, had a gutter repair guy over to look at, a mess we've got right now that's going to cost us whatever, $1,000 to fix. And I'm with you. And, I wouldn't have felt that way 10 years ago. You do change. Right. I suspect too, you change if your circumstances remain the same, but that's the other part of it is our circumstances change. I mean, I'm guessing that when you started Get Rich Slowly, which was what, 2006?
2006.
Okay. You probably had no idea what was in store for you.
No clue.
I mean, is it fair to say that starting that blog was life-changing for you?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And, starting DoughRoller in 2007 was life-changing for me. Mm-hmm. And, our paths haven't gone exactly the same direction there, but, there was just no way to predict, what the next 5 or 10 years were going to look like.
Yeah. I say that right now, people ask me from time to time how my life is right now compared to when it was when I started Get Rich Slowly. And it's night and day. I could not have predicted what would have happened financially and with my relationship with my wife and just all sorts of things. I would never have imagined. 10 years ago, I had not been outside the country. Now I visited 20 different countries. I love to travel.
What's your favorite? What's been your favorite destination?
my girlfriend and I went to Scotland last year, and maybe it's because I had no expectations, but Scotland was an amazing place. It was beautiful. The people were friendly. The food was good, even the haggis.
Really?
And, yeah.
Okay.
And I really enjoyed it. But I also love portions of South America, especially the Andes, like Peru and Ecuador. I feel a real attachment to the land when I'm up in the Andes.
Wow. What time of year did you go to Scotland?
It was cold. It was Easter.
Okay.
Like March 31st, April 1st of 2013.
Okay. Good. Yeah. Our favorite trip was probably Guatemala, which is where our children are from.
Oh, yeah.
And just beautiful. I was surprised at how beautiful the country. I don't know why I was surprised. I'm not sure I didn't really have expectations, I guess. But I've certainly not traveled as much as you have. Okay, one last question on the guide.
Sure.
And there's so much in the guide. I'm only scratching the surface. Mm-hmm. But there's a concept you mentioned that I think folks could really benefit from, and that's the purge, merge, and upgrade.
Right.
Kind of just describe that for folks.
So the notion of purging, merging, and upgrading is we go through life, and for the most part, nobody really wants to do a lot of work. I get it. So we just accumulate stuff, and this is physical stuff. You accumulate physical stuff, but you also accumulate accounts. You accumulate credit card accounts, bank accounts, utility accounts, what have you. And they accumulate, and eventually you're carrying a lot of baggage. It's like a ship sailing through the sea with barnacles attached. So with Purge, Merge, and Upgrade, what I recommend you do is set aside some time and actively purge the things that no longer work for you or don't fit your needs. And at the same time that you're purging these, try to merge accounts or merge whatever it is that you're working with. So, for example, you might have 3 different Roth IRAs that you've established over the year, or 401ks more likely. Well, find a way to merge those so you only have one account that you have to worry about and manage. And then the final part of this is to upgrade your accounts or whatever you're working with. So after you've purged, after you've merged, then go through and see if you can find some better options. And, the popular one on personal finance blogs is talking about savings accounts or maybe credit cards. So after you've arranged your accounts the best way they can be, go out and look to see if there are other options available that are better than the things that you already have. Yeah. And I think this process is a very effective one at optimizing your life. And you only have to do it once every couple of years. Yeah,
and I guess you could apply it not only to, like, as you've said, investment accounts or bank accounts, but really all your monthly expenses.
Yes.
Go through them all and purge what you don't need. If you don't need that 200 channel cable package because you watch everything on Netflix, right. And I'm speaking for myself here, that's a great one to purge.
For a long time, I continued to carry my Netflix account after the divorce, even though I wasn't watching DVDs and I hadn't done the streaming stuff yet. I carried that for several months, and eventually I cut it. And I only reinstated it once I discovered the beauty that is Apple TV, and right. I could stream everything through that.
Yeah, we did the same thing where we were paying to not only stream but also to get the DVDs. Mm-hmm. And one day I said to my wife, "When was the last time we actually watched a DVD?" Mm-hmm. And so we got rid of that just to have the streaming. It's whatever, $8 a month. So, hey,
last night Kim and I were talking. We were watching the Portland Trailblazers, and we had to go. I have a basic cable package right now just for situations like this because there's no way to stream that game. I'm sure there is if I want to go find an illegal method, and sometimes I do, I'll admit. But in this case, I'm not that industrious, so I'm fine paying a few bucks a month to have this basic cable package. Anyway, Kim was talking last night about how she almost feels like it would be worth it to pay for HD TV to have certain sporting events or certain things in HD. And I got to thinking, in a couple of years, I bet we won't even have to consider that. Maybe cable will be around. The cable company, Comcast, is sure going to try to make it so that cable's around. But I'll bet that more and more we're going to get to a point where I can watch my Portland Trailblazers or my Portland Timbers on TV through streaming means, like an Apple TV or something.
Yeah, I hope so, because and that's a particular problem with sports.
Yes,
and absolutely. I remember watching. I think it was Ohio State football, because I'm a Buckeye fan growing up in Central Ohio, and it was their bowl game. I think this last year, and we'd gotten rid of cable. Mm-hmm. I eventually found a free and legal way to stream it, but the broadcast was in Spanish. So I basically, for me, I had no commentary, but I could watch the game. But you think it's like there's a stranglehold on all this by the cable companies, and it just drives you crazy.
Well, we hit upon a solution during college football season last year where we could just go down to the pub and watch some games. But the nearest pub doesn't have a TV. And plus, right now, Kim and I are both trying not to drink, so that kind of defeats the purpose. Plus, then you have to go out of the house on last night was a Wednesday night, and neither of us wanted to do that. So,
Anyway. Well, hey, I appreciate your time. Your guide. The one thing I like about it, I'm going to finish with another favorite quote of mine in your guide. But is how practical it is. I mean, I love the theory of finance, and that's fine, and there's a place for that, I suppose. But at the end of the day, if it doesn't help your life, what's the point?
Right, exactly.
And, you cover you cover investing, the importance of low costs, index funds, you cover getting out of debt, all these things in your guide. On the getting out of debt, the part I loved, you talk about the debt snowball, right? And, do you pay off the high interest rate debt first? Do you pay off the small balance first? I think you mentioned Adam from Man versus Debt had his own hybrid approach, the debt he hates the most, right?
Mm-hmm. I love that.
Yeah. I never thought about which debt do I hate the most, but that's an interesting concept. But here's what I love. The quote, you kind of summed it all up by saying this, quote, "The most important thing when paying off your debt is to pay off your debts." And I thought, man, that's perfect. Great advice.
Well, people get so hung up on trying to find the best way to do something or the right way to do something. And ultimately, it doesn't matter. The best way is the way that works.
Right. Well, that was great. Well, hey, JD, I really appreciate your time.
Thanks, Rob.
I'll leave links to your guide. I almost said book, to your guide in the show notes, but I really appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you so much. This was great fun.
Well, I hope you enjoyed the interview with JD. The guide that he created, it's interesting because as you heard in the interview, he'd published a book sort of more through a more traditional platform. This guide is really an entirely different animal. I mean, the guide itself, which comes in a PDF, is incredibly extensive, and it covers a lot of information. I mean, everything from developing a mission statement and an action plan and setting goals to budgeting, getting out of debt, credit scores, preparing a net worth statement, increasing your income, decreasing your spending, investing. I mean, it really sort of covers all of the major areas of personal finance. But then in addition to that, you get access to a website that includes a number of worksheets, action plans, a lot of templates for budgeting, for debt reduction calculator. He refers to a lot of tools in the guide. And then he's interviewed a number of people, and you get audio and transcripts of these interviews, including folks that I've had on the show, like Liz Weston and Jesse Meacham and Gene Chatsky, and covers really everything from getting out of debt to managing your credit, managing your family finances. So it just a tremendous amount of work went into creating all of this. It's far more than just a book. So how do you get it? Well, if you go to DoughRoller.net/JD, that will redirect you to the website where you can purchase the guide if you'd like. That is an affiliate link. I do receive a commission if you follow that link and purchase the guide. I think the guide is ideal for those that are trying to beat their finances into submission. It talks about investing, but I wouldn't view this as sort of a very deep dive into investing. It's more about getting out of debt, managing your money in a more simplified way, creating goals and developing a mission statement for your life, increasing your income, decreasing your spending. So I think it's really ideal for those that are sort of struggling to get their arms around their finances. And I think it does a great job of helping folks do that. And it does come with a guarantee, and the guarantee is pretty simple. It will help you, or it's free. That's their guarantee. That's hard to beat. Again, you can check that out, DoughRoller.net/JD. And that brings our show to a close. As always, and let me get the music fired up. There we go. As always, you can subscribe to this podcast and leave a review and a rating, just go to DoughRoller.net/iTunes. That will redirect you to the iTunes page where this podcast resides. You can sign up for our newsletter. It goes out every Saturday at 7 p.m., DoughRoller.net/newsletter. Packet full of links to all kinds of stuff that helps you improve your finances. And sometimes we throw in a lot of fun stuff, too. I mean, we talk about money all the time, but there's certainly a lot more to life than finances. And as always, you can email me, dr@DoughRoller.net. I'd love to hear from you, whether you've got questions, you want me to cover a topic, you have a tool or a resource you'd like to share with me. I'd love to hear from you. I read every email, and I respond to every email. Hey, remember, until next time, the best thing money can buy is financial freedom.